She looked me dead in the eye and said, "I like you, but I don't love you." No tears, no hesitation, just a cold downgrade of everything I thought we were. That single sentence didn't just shatter my heart. It activated something inside me she never expected. The exit protocol. I remember sitting on the edge of our couch, half watching a dumb cooking show, when she turned to me with that look. You know the one, the kind that makes your stomach knot before a single word even escapes her lips. I had no idea this night would change everything. I had said, "I love you," countless times before, whispered it like a ritual, hoping it bounced back in kind. But this time, silence. She took a deep breath, her voice steady, almost unnervingly calm. "I like you, but I'm not in love with you." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It didn't come with tears or yelling, just precise, like she was correcting a minor error on a spreadsheet. And in that moment, I realized something terrifyingly clear. The person I thought I'd built my life with had quietly redefined the rules without asking me. I nodded, said nothing more. The apartment felt smaller instantly, the air heavier, like it had absorbed the weight of what she just declared. She thought she was being brave. She had no idea she'd just started a chain reaction, one that would turn our home, our routines, even her expectations, completely upside down. The first night after her words, I didn't sleep. Not because I was crying or begging, but because I was thinking, calculating, observing. Everything we had built together suddenly existed under a new set of rules she had drafted without consulting me. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was curious about how far this new reality could stretch before it cracked. The next morning she was cheerfully oblivious. "Morning," she said, smiling like nothing had changed as I poured my coffee. I nodded politely, poured mine into a travel mug, and left the kitchen without filling her cup. The old me would have handed her a mug, kissed her forehead, asked how she slept. The new me? I left her to notice or not. Her confusion showed almost immediately. She paused, mid-toast bite, realizing something was off. "Did you drink all the coffee already?" she asked, trying to sound casual. I shrugged. "Yeah, guess I finished the pot." I didn't explain. I didn't apologize. That little domestic ritual, once automatic, had vanished, and she felt it instantly. By evening, the first cracks began to appear in her calm facade. She asked me to grab something from the store, something she always expected me to remember. "Can you pick up the almond milk? And maybe some bread? The gluten-free one?" she added, like a practiced footnote. I paused, then said, "Sure. Here's a thought. Check the fridge. See what's missing. Write a list. Make sure it's exactly what you want. That usually helps prevent mistakes." She blinked, clearly not used to this response. The man who used to run errands for her, who anticipated every whim, had been replaced by someone neutral. Someone who only acted when explicitly asked, and then only on terms that made sense. I started noticing small victories in silence. The dishes she left weren't mine to scrub. The laundry she dropped wasn't mine to fold. The emails she expected me to reply to? Not mine. I had been in love. I had been her personal assistant, emotional support system, and unpaid planner. But the declaration of "I like you, not love you" rewired the entire system. I still lived here, still shared space, but nothing was automatic anymore. Everything required consent, attention, explicit permission. The first real test came on Sunday. Her car had been making a noise for days, and she casually mentioned it while scrolling her phone. "Do you think you could look at it? I don't want to get ripped off at the mechanic." In the past, I would have been under the hood within the hour, tools scattered, cursing and fixing. Now I lean back in my chair. Sounds stressful. Maybe check a few quotes online before committing. Yelp's usually helpful. Then I turned, back to my work. Her jaw tightened. "You're not," she trailed off, like she couldn't even finish the thought. I didn't answer. The man who would have spent hours fixing her car, who had a mechanic on speed dial, was gone, replaced by someone neutral, someone who likes her, yes, but nothing more. She tried another angle, emotional manipulation. Late that night, she came home from a night out, slightly tipsy, wearing my old hoodie, and a look meant to disarm me. She sat on the edge of the bed. "I missed you," she whispered. Her voice wobbled. In the past, I would have wrapped her in my arms, whispered comfort back, let the night drift into some semblance of us. Now I put my book down, nodded politely, and said, "Sounds like you're having a tough evening. Have you thought about talking to someone? A therapist can help work through feelings like that." She froze, then tears threatened. "But I nodded again. Neutral, polite, unshakable. I understand. Change is hard." And that was it. No embrace, no drama, no begging. The room was quiet. She hadn't accounted for the fact that honesty has consequences, and that someone on the receiving end can choose neutrality over pain. By the end of the week, it was clear. I wasn't punishing her. I was recalibrating. Everything I once did, Automatically out of love was now filtered through the lens of, does this make sense? Is this necessary? It was precise, surgical, a quiet but profound shift in power. She was starting to realize that her declaration of affection, or lack thereof, didn't just take love off the table. It removed me from the obligations of love entirely. The apartment was quieter, the air felt heavier, and for the first time, she began to see it. The man who used to anticipate, fix, soothe, and plan wasn't gone because he didn't care. He was gone because the terms she set no longer required him to exist that way. The roommate protocol had begun, and it was only a matter of time before she understood just how deep it ran. By Friday, small habits became evidence of a larger shift. She started leaving notes about groceries she assumed I would get. I responded with receipts of her own, itemized, polite, confusion, shock, outrage, but no argument. She had built a system thinking it only liberated her, and yet in doing so, she had unknowingly activated a protocol that slowly removed every privilege of automatic attention she had once relied on. She didn't just downgrade love, she unleashed something far colder, far more effective, and this was only the beginning. By the second week, the pattern was unmistakable. She would try little experiments, small tests, to see if the old me still existed somewhere beneath the surface, leaving the laundry basket half full, expecting me to sort and fold it, asking me to grab things from the store she could easily pick up herself, sending subtle messages, "I feel like you're distant," as if those words alone could pull me back into my old role. I responded exactly as I intended, neutrally, politely, efficiently. "I noticed the laundry. Do you want it folded, or would you prefer to do it yourself?" "Sure, you can pick it up, or maybe check what's in the fridge first to avoid duplicates." Small, factual sentences. No frustration, no emotion. And with each polite reply, the panic in her eyes grew. It wasn't revenge. It was recalibration. The man who loved her had disappeared. What remained was a roommate, a peer, someone who likes her enough to be helpful, but not enough to bend over backward. She tried subtle guilt trips, the ones that had worked for years. "I thought we'd go to brunch like we used to," she said one morning, voice hesitant, as if I might cave. I looked up from my laptop, calm. "I have a few things to catch up on today. Maybe you can go with friends." Her confusion became desperation. She'd pause mid-sentence, realizing she wasn't getting the reaction she expected. There was no pout, no argument, no attempt to manipulate, just neutral acknowledgement. I had removed myself from the emotional currency she had relied on, and now she was noticing the void. Then came the first serious escalation: her birthday. In the past, I would have spent weeks planning, coordinating, making sure every detail was perfect. Surprises, reservations, gifts. She had come to expect it as a natural extension of love. That year, I simply rolled over and said, "Happy birthday. Hope you have a good day." Then I continued with my morning routine. She stared at me, mouth slightly open like I had forgotten how to human. "Nothing planned?" she asked cautiously, trying to read my expression. I smiled lightly. "Just work and some personal errands. Want to grab a pizza tonight as friends?" I emphasized the word friend like it was a scalpel, slicing through her assumptions. Her jaw tightened, disbelief spreading across her face. She had expected a grand gesture, an acknowledgement of her day as if love demanded it. Instead, she got neutral, precise, friendly, and the more she tried to provoke a reaction, the more it eluded her. Financial cracks soon appeared. She had been used to automatic payments, dates, bills, small luxuries she never asked for. Now, everything changed. Her phone got disconnected. Utilities were her responsibility. Grocery bills no longer included her extras. When she came to me, in panic, I calmly reminded her she was no longer part of the automatic system that had funded her life. Her attempts at manipulation grew bolder. Loud music, leaving messes deliberately, trying to trigger the old emotional responses. I didn't. I simply adapted. Headphones on, my own space preserved, polite gestures when necessary, but nothing more. The real turning point came when she tried the ultimate test: intimacy. One evening, she wandered into the bedroom wearing nothing but one of my old hoodies, hoping the familiarity, the comfort of our past closeness, would melt away the new boundary. She sat on the bed, tears in her eyes. "I miss us," she whispered, voice thick with emotion. I set my book aside, looked at her with mild concern, the kind you might show a neighbor who just lost their dog. "I understand you're struggling. Have you thought about talking to a professional? They can help work through complicated emotions." Her lips trembled, but I nodded, neutral, polite, friendly. Change is hard. These things take time. She froze, realization dawning. The old leverage she counted on, the affection, the automatic care, the unpaid devotion, was gone. I wasn't angry. I wasn't cruel. I was simply no longer participating. The emotional economy had shifted entirely, and she was forced to see the consequences of her own words. By the third week, she was desperate. Every glance, every sigh, every half-sentence was an experiment, and every experiment failed. The calm, neutral presence I maintained was unbreakable, polite, efficient, emotionally unavailable. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I finally respected the parameters she set. Small victories piled up. I stopped making her coffee. I stopped leaving her favorite snacks out. I stopped offering advice without explicit request. Everything once given automatically now required conscious effort, and she had no plan for that. And through it all, she couldn't understand why the man who had once bent over backward for her was now a wall of calm, impartial indifference. The realization was slow, cruelly gradual, and completely irreversible. She had declared, "I like you, not love you," expecting freedom. What she didn't see was that she had also activated the most efficient consequence imaginable, a system that operated according to her own rules, leaving her to navigate the fallout alone. The roommate protocol was fully engaged, and she was about to learn just how thorough it could be. By the fourth week, her desperation had evolved into full-blown panic. The subtle tests, the quiet manipulation, they had escalated. She left notes about groceries, hints about errands, even small reminders about bills she assumed I'd handle. But I responded the same way I always did now, politely, neutrally, efficiently. "I saw your note. You'll have to call and set up the delivery yourself. I'm sure you'll manage." Her face turned pale. She had never had to manage alone before. Then came the confrontation she thought would break me. She slammed the kitchen door behind her one evening, voice shaking. "I don't understand why you're acting like this. You used to care. You used to love me. Why aren't you reacting?" I didn't flinch. "I'm acting exactly as you asked me to. You said you like me, not love me. I'm honoring that." Her shoulders slumped. Disbelief etched into every line of her face. "But I didn't mean—" "I understood exactly what you meant," I interrupted softly. "I just accepted it." Her world began to crumble in real time. The little conveniences she had relied on were gone. No automatic coffee, no prepaid bills, no grocery trips. She couldn't comprehend how the life she had taken for granted was unraveling so methodically, yet so calmly. And that calm was the cruelest part. Her friends, who had cheered her bravery on social media, didn't notice the changes. She had counted on them as witnesses to her clever maneuver, but no post could protect her from the consequences of honesty. Without love, every attempt to provoke, guilt, or manipulate me failed. My neutrality was unbreakable. Then came the final test, the lease. The apartment we shared was legally up for renewal, and she assumed we'd continue as usual. I left the paperwork on the counter, highlighted my decision in plain, calm language. "I'm not renewing. I've already signed a new lease." She froze, staring at the paper as though it were suddenly radioactive. "You're leaving? How can you just leave?" I shrugged, friendly, casual. "You said you like me, not love me. I'm treating that statement with the respect it deserves. You'll need to make your own arrangements." The realization hit her like a freight train. Every privilege, every assumption, every unspoken expectation had been quietly removed. The man who had loved her, who had built routines around her happiness, was gone. The roommate remained, polite, neutral, detached, efficient. She collapsed into the kitchen chair, face buried in her hands. "This isn't fair. I made a mistake. I told you I loved you." "No," I corrected gently. "You told me you missed me. You told me you weren't in love. I believed you. I acted accordingly." "I'm not punishing you." "I'm honoring the truth you set." Her tears fell silently. She had gambled on my love being unconditional, a constant resource she could draw from. She had forgotten one thing. Love is not a service. It requires reciprocity. It requires presence. And now, presence was gone. For a final blow, I picked up a small velvet box that had arrived that afternoon. Her eyes lit with hope, a desperate flicker. Even now, she thought this might be the turning point. She leaned forward as I opened it. Inside was not a ring, not a plea to return, but a key, a single metal key, simple, shining. "This is for my new apartment," I said, holding it up. "I'm really excited about it." Her face fell instantly. The hope that had flared, that had been so fragile and naive, extinguished in an instant. She had assumed my love was an inexhaustible resource. She had thought she could opt out of emotional commitment while keeping all the perks. The key made one thing perfectly clear. She had no claim on my life anymore. She didn't speak. She just sank further into her chair, staring at the lease renewal, the symbols of her new reality. The silence that followed was deafening. Not angry, not dramatic, just absolute. I left the room. I left her there to process the consequences of her own words. For the first time in months, the apartment felt completely empty, not lonely. naturally, not tense, empty. I wasn't lost in heartbreak or revenge. I was free. She got what she asked for. A man who liked her enough to remain polite, but no longer loved her enough to sacrifice for her, anticipate her needs, or participate in her life. The roommate protocol had reached its peak. The system I had activated was flawless, precise, unyielding. She had created it, unwittingly, and now she was left to navigate the aftermath alone, finally learning the cost of redefining love without considering the consequences. She wanted the old me back, the one who loved her unconditionally. But the old me no longer existed. I had honored her honesty, respected her choice, and reclaimed my life, and that was the final, quiet victory, unseen, unemotional, and devastatingly complete. If you've ever loved someone completely, only to realize that love wasn't returned in the way you expected, you know just how crushing it can feel. And sometimes, the most shocking part isn't the heartbreak itself. It's discovering the quiet power in walking away, in reclaiming yourself when the other person refuses to meet you halfway. That's exactly what happened here, she thought. She could have the benefits without the responsibility, the comfort without the commitment, and the man who loved her would stay in place forever. But life doesn't work like that. The beauty of this story isn't just in her shock, it's in his calm, precise, unshakable response. He didn't yell, beg, or plead. He didn't retaliate. He simply adjusted to the reality she created, and in doing so reminded us all that love is not a service, it's a mutual exchange. And sometimes respecting someone's honesty means respecting your own boundaries first. If this story resonated with you, or if it made you rethink how you value honesty, boundaries, and self-respect in relationships, I'd love for you to join our Family True Tales community. Hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had a situation like this? And don't forget to subscribe, because we share real, shocking, and emotional stories just like this every day. Trust me, you won't want to miss the next one. And remember, sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones that teach us to stand firm when everything else falls apart.